Like, he reminds me of Russell Wilson, where you can just see he's smart. Like, it just amplifies how much knuckleheads the last couple of quarterbacks were here.
Yeah. You know what's funny, Ducky? Because you're sitting there, and you're talking about this, and I'm literally doing a comparison in the background, against James Blackman, right? That's our up.
Yeah.
And then you after watching this and doing this, I even get more of an appreciation in a sense for D'Eriq King as the quarterback, because he just does little things very innately and very efficiently, things that you don't really notice, like putting the ball, like go back and Will Mallory. He's like, oh, he threw a bad ball. That ball to Will Mallory on that shoulder is what led to a touchdown. And meanwhile, you turn around and you watch a clip from James Blackman. He throws the ball on the inside shoulder. Later on, it ends up leading to a touchdown, but he puts it on the wrong shoulder. D'Eriq King, there was a couple 3rd and 14s, guys, where he stays in the pocket, his offensive line, and let's give them credit because, only 3 sacks in 2 games. I mean, they gave up 11 the first week last year. It was insane. Yeah. So you're way on pace. That was my group from day one. When you asked me who is the group who's going to benefit the most, I said it was the offensive line. Thankfully, in 2 games, they're proving me right. But like D'Eriq King can sense that. He knows, hey, my offensive line is fine. He knows when to run. He knows when to stay. And you know what? When you have these running quarterbacks, sometimes maybe they leave the pocket a little bit too soon. But you had a 3rd and 14 to Mark Pope that I watched that he sensed it. He had another one to Brevin Jordan when he just scanned like 4 wide receivers before he find it. He didn't leave too early. He understands the presence. He knows where to put the balls. He's not just a running quarterback. And you know how you can prove that to people? He had 50 touchdowns, right? Yeah. Anytime you break anything record-wise from college and Tim Tebow, you're doing something right. And when you turn around and only like 3 people in collegiate history had ended up with 50 touchdowns at their position, D'Eriq King being one of them, you got to give him praise. I'm starting to see why, and I agree, Ducky. He's just another level. He's just another level that Miami hasn't seen before here.
Yeah, one thing I love about him is I wouldn't profess to know quarterbacks well enough to say that there's a guy that he really sells me on with his arm. But as a ball carrier, like, he looks the same as what Kyler Murray is doing in a Arizona Cardinals helmet right now. Just like when he tucks it and run, he's so dynamic. I mean, he's small and shifty, and I don't know. There was a play that Kyler Murray had against the 49ers in week 1 where, like, there was a defender that had the angle on him running full speed, and he cuts away from the defender and like kicks it into another gear and somehow outruns him, even though he changed direction. And like, that's the kind of stuff that I'm seeing from D'Eriq King, and I just love it, man. Like, he's so athletic. Even if he can't make it in the NFL as a quarterback, like, there has to be a spot for him because he's just special. And with that being said, I love what I'm seeing with his arm so far. I think he's, a very, very good college quarterback too. Dude, I don't know. I'm just like drooling over here when I watch him play. He's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of the intangibles there too. I mean, when you see them like bring over the touchdown rings, right? Now I've always liked the turnover chain, right? And and since the turnover chain's inception, and it could be some people might constitute it gimmicky. I get it, but since the turnover chain's inception, Miami has led like P5 teams in turnovers. I mean, it has some magic powers. Now, in full admission, the touchdown rings, I don't like that.
Agreed.
And I like what D'Eriq King. I mean, he immediately is trying to pass the buck off. He's trying to I don't want him, give him to the offensive. I don't want him. It's almost like the rings have become hot potato, right?
Yeah.
Where the turnover chain is sought after. His leadership quality. He's not going to celebrate. The job's not done. We're still playing. And you know what? Take these rings somewhere else. So I love that about D'Eriq King's ability. From the second he's got here, he like earned the ability to become a captain. He gained the attention and the respect of everybody in that locker room. There is no, locker room quarterback division going on right now because he leads it, right? He is doing a great job, and that is what you need at the quarterback position above all else. It doesn't matter. You can see all the talent on the field, but if you can't be a leader off of it, it's not going to work. So I'm really, you're right. And I like the comparisons. I love Ducky's comparison of Russell Wilson. He has that playmaking ability. I love, the shiftiness as once he turns into runner of Kyler Murray. I think that's accurate. And then you mentioned earlier about, some of the deep balls we haven't got it. But if you go back, like that ball that he threw, there was 2 deep balls. I ended up being like, one was a pass interference to Pope. And I think that was, when you march it out, I think that would have been 6. That would have been a deep ball. But, he got pass interference on it. Great job. That's what you want. And then the one when we gave Don Chaney 1-on-1, Don blew by his guy. I don't know, freshman mistake. He didn't look up for the ball. But that could have been a big play too. So still not getting the deep shots. But it's the great thing. You have an offense that, in the past, you needed a deep shot, deep play touchdown just to sniff like 28 points to 30 points. It's nice to miss on shots like that because you missed on 2 of them and you walk away with 47 points. Yeah. I'll take that all day. Take that all day.
Yeah, and watching De'Aaron King's 2018 highlight reel, I've watched just highlight reel after highlight reel of him. And, the deep ball was actually what I was most confident in coming into the year because he was hitting them time and time again in Houston. I was actually more worried about the short and intermediate routes, and he looks very accurate in those. So I'm actually not worried about the deep ball right now. I feel like it'll come. I feel like that's the type of timing, chemistry type thing that you develop over time. So I'm not worried about that. And the fact that he looks good in the short and intermediate just makes me, I have no complaints with De'Aaron King. I'm just 100% excited with the way our offense is looking and really the prospects for the whole season right now.
I agree. You said it. Earlier on before this season started and after Enos was jettisoned to be a running back coach, you go from basically quarterback guru to running back coach for Cincinnati. Talk about a fall.
What
they
were
were
you
like,
think happened there?
You know what, Ducky, great question. It's round hole, square peg, or whatever that adage is. I'm part dyslexic sometimes. It was just a bad system. And I get it because he sold Miami a bag of goods. He sold me. I'll be the first one to admit it. You see Alabama coming off record numbers. He's the next successor. On paper, he looked to be the guy. Now, the only thing that I will give me a little bit of a pass on, I went back and I read my prior article and when he first was named the hire, and I wrote, and at the time I was writing for Insight, and I had a line in there. I was like, this isn't a spread up-tempo offense that I would have chose. Can it work here in Miami? Absolutely. That's where I was dead wrong, right? I was right in thinking that, hey, I don't think this is this isn't, and I'm going to tie in something that happened before with what you said, Duck, because you're like the fact that they haven't in this COVID series or season in this environment, they don't have the time to necessarily put it all on paper, what have you. But this style of offense is actually tailor-made for Miami because it's like less thinking, less moving parts, just line up and go.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're seeing, right? Less moving parts, line up and go. You don't have as many motions as you had the year before. You don't have as many exotic formations that you had the year. You're not asking your quarterback to hold the ball for 7 seconds, which I think was the biggest critical design flaw of an Enos offense, thinking he still had an Alabama offensive line. Right. No, you had a good, talented offensive line in the avenue that you didn't put him in disadvantageous spots. Yeah. And that's exactly what he did. So just a bad system fit. Take that offense, go in the Midwest somewhere, it might do good. Like go to Iowa with it or something where you have beasts, Wisconsin. But down here, just a bad fit. And you got to think too, guys, most Miami kids, South Florida offenses, it was the same thing coming off D'Onofrio. I was like, most of these kids play a one-gap 4-3 system. Right. It's just like give him an avenue, tell him go get the quarterback. If the running back happens to be there, tackle his ass too. You know what I'm saying? But now the offense, so it's like it's native tongue. It's familiar DNA. It's like, oh, you put me in space in an up-tempo offense, no problem. You want me to run all day in South Florida Heat, no problems. So I think that's what happened to Enos there, and it just goes to show you because it's like Miami. Ooh, they just missed their opportunities. If they would have been running this style of offense 10 years ago, this could have been something Miami was used to. Miami could have been the epicenter of offensive football. It really could have, but it missed its window.
Where do you think that stems from? Do you think the administration is like nowhere to drop back to school?
Pride. You know what? Pride. When Miami was winning its national championships in 2001, there was an arms race developing, right? The SEC started to get the CBS money started to roll in. These big outlandish weight rooms started to manifest. These epic proportioned, like, facilities, upgrades to their stadiums, an effort to go ahead and dump millions into recruiting. And Miami just rested on its laurel first with its facilities and said, nah, kids will want to come to Miami because it's Miami. And they got away with this rinky podunk little weight room, but because it had, these kids started to change too. They weren't about the tradition. They were about the flash. It became an instant gratification kind of society. And Miami was resting on this stature that it had, that it was starting to lose. Now, take that to the offensive side of the ball, because it was, believe it or not, and one of the worst offensive coordinators I've ever seen was Patrick Nix. Patrick Nix actually went to Randy Shannon and said, I want to run an up-tempo spread offense, to which Randy Shannon's pride, right? Randy Shannon's pride said, no, Miami is a pro team. At that moment, it was lost. To me, it was lost, because Miami wasn't a pro team. You got to go back and realize what Miami's special. Miami under Howard Schnellenberger was a pro team when most of the country was an option team. Miami under Jimmy Johnson turned to a 4-3 attack system and put light athletes to go ahead and make disruption behind the line of scrimmage, while most people wanted 300-pound linemen who two-gapped and were just taking up space. When it was Dennis Erickson who came in with a single-back offense, which was revolutionary for the time, the minute Miami decided that it was going to be a pro team and rest on its laurels, it got his ass kicked routinely, and the game passed them by. So now they finally start to modernize the wardrobe. They start to think, hey, we have to be forward-thinking, and now you see over these first two games, like epic proportion numbers. Remember, the second highest total rushing since 2004. Crazy. The second most points since joining the ACC against a ranked opponent. And it just happened magically, right? It was always in front of their face. They just didn't and weren't willing to admit it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was going to bring up something, but you touched on it. The Enos thing was kind of the same thing as D'Onofrio, and that should be a lesson that we learn from as a program, that we don't need complexity, we don't need intricacy, we don't need an NFL type system. Like, we have very fast twitch, instinctive, high level athletes that come out of the South Florida high school system. So like, why not maximize that? Why focus so much on this read and react, or the, that type of stuff that we're expecting these pro athletes to do, when like you said, it's native tongue for these kids to just get out and run until they can anymore, right? So I really hope that the program has learned from that, and that we will never make that mistake on either side of the ball ever again.
Agreed. Just Miami needs to, above all else, be the most innovative team, because that's how they won their national championships. It was on the back of innovation. It wasn't just, Miami couldn't do it. Like, Miami wouldn't have won its 83 national championship running the option like so many other teams, right? It just wasn't going to happen. And the irony too, because I mentioned Randy Shannon. Randy Shannon won a quote unquote national championship with UCF. And what offense was the UCF running? Right? The UCF Knights were running the offense that Patrick Nix came in, told you that you probably should have run back then. So it just goes to show you, just that one bad decision and resting on your laurels set this program back decades.
Yeah. Well, I had a quick question. X's and O's from a chart that I saw. It was a chart of, which players played how many snaps on offense and defense. I can't remember the total snap count from our offense. I think it was in the high 60s or low 70s. Is that correct?
Of the last game we had?
Correct, against Louisville.
I believe the total was 60, and our average last year was 64, so we barely hit 60. The average for SMU last year was about 16 more plays a game, like 15 and change. So we were 64 plays a game last year, and they were basically right, just add 15 to that, and then they were 79 plays. So they averaged 79, so we were underneath even last year's total. But go ahead.
So I noticed that Brevin Jordan only missed 6 snaps on offense, and Will Mallory played in the mid 40s, meaning that those two, most likely shared the snaps for at least 40, or they shared the field for at least 40 snaps that we ran on offense. And I would love if you could tell us a little bit about our 2 tight end sets. As we mentioned earlier, the wide receivers are kind of lackluster. I mean, I'll say it so you don't have to. I don't love our wide receiver group. I'm with you that our 2 most dangerous pass catchers are probably Will Mallory and Brevin Jordan. And so I'm very excited about the idea of 2 tight end sets